Mein Kampf has been one of the most requested books in public libraries for a number of years because people want to see it. They want to read it themselves. And we had this old saying too in libraries, let the books battle it out on the shelves. David knows that, that you present the thing so that people have that opportunity. So yes, read it, because sometimes when you read the original and you can make your own connections possibly to what's going on now. You can see the echoes. You can draw your own conclusions and say, oh, oh, oh.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Arlie, I think you're gonna love this.
Oh, I'm very excited by that.
3, 2, 1, lift off!
I always tell myself, wow, this is where it happened.
When you're transparent, when you're real, you can actually hear the difference.
I can't wait to hear all the stories you are going to create.
Things that make you, you.
Can I hug you? Of course.
May I begin, Mr. Harriet?
Hello and welcome. We're so glad you're here. I'm Susan Goldberg, President and CEO of GBH, a dynamic organization that has helped define public media for more than 70 years. GBH is the leading content creator for PBS and a partner to NPR and PRX, delivering compelling stories, news, and information to diverse audiences wherever they are. In fact, we're the most trusted media institution in our region. Our flagship national programs have been winning awards for decades and are the most watched programs across the public media system. We're proud of this legacy, but even more excited about what we'll do next. As the media landscape rapidly evolves with new platforms and ways to get information and entertainment, GBH will be here for you. We're passionate about creating content that engages, illuminates, and inspires our community and beyond. As the world around us changes, our goals remain the same: to produce great storytelling that matters to you.
Please welcome to the stage pianist and founder of the Gather Here Tour, Miki Sawada.
As a prelude to this very important conversation we're about to hear, I'd like to offer you Beethoven's Opus 109 Piano Sonata, just the first movement, which is one of the very last works that he composed for solo piano, and it was written in 1820, and the manuscript actually lives at the Library of Congress. By this time, Beethoven had gone completely deaf, and in his music, I hear an eternal searching for light and for truth.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Goldberg. Not only am I the president and CEO of GBH, but I'm the daughter of a librarian. And looking back, I think it was those weekly trips to the library when I was a little girl that helped me realize the world was a lot bigger than Ann Arbor, Michigan. The library was a magic place. It was like a candy store that held the answers to all of my endless questions. And just one reason I'm so grateful and excited to be in one of America's great libraries here tonight, and so happy to have you all here. This is the kickoff of our media summit. In the next 24 jam-packed hours, we're going to hear from journalists, academics, influencers, and all kinds of experts on how we can tell stories and convey information in ways that will help us bridge the nation's divides. I believe those efforts need to begin not in Washington, D.C., or some other place on high, but at the local level, in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and in our libraries, like this one. GBH has a special history with the Boston Public Library. Nearly 10 years ago, we created a first-of-its-kind media studio in a public library right upstairs, where many of you just were. And you noticed it's a literally transparent place where anybody can come in and watch us create programs, ask questions of elected leaders like mayors and judges and the governor even, and they can listen to poetry and jazz, play trivia, meet people from all walks of life. This is what public media is all about. At GBH, we believe that history belongs to all of us. And in partnership with the Library of Congress, we are the proud home of the American Archive of Public Broadcasting, preserving hundreds and hundreds of hours of public media video and audio so it can be enjoyed for generations. Carnegie, too, our main supporter for this summit, also has deep connections to libraries. For more than a century, Carnegie has been one of the largest funders of libraries, and it all started when a Scottish immigrant named Andrew Carnegie educated himself by borrowing books from the library. And of course, he went on to build an enormous fortune, ultimately giving back and funding the construction of more than 2,500 libraries worldwide, including nearly 1,700 in the United States in the 40 years leading up to the First World War. Carnegie did this because he believed that libraries were cradles of democracy that stood as temples of knowledge. Now, tonight's discussion will honor the importance of this legacy of access and of keeping every kind of information open and free. But we'll also talk about the current situation that we find ourselves in, where information is increasingly unreliable, manipulated, intentionally suppressed, literally being removed from shelves, or even erased. I look forward to hearing the insights of one of America's leading legal scholars, Martha Minow, who now serves as the head of the Board of Trustees of GBH, and the Librarian of Congress, Carla Hayden, on what we can do to protect truth in today's world. And now it is my pleasure to introduce my friend and partner here at the library, David Leonard, the president of the Boston Public Library. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, and thanks to all our friends and partners at GBH. Welcome to all of you and from the extended community. Indeed, just under 10 years ago, BPL was in the process of completing its major renovation of the newer building here at the Central Library in Copley Square. And this space that we're in right now was part of that renovation. And I couldn't be happier that it was GBH in partnership with the Quai d'Affaires that came forward with this brilliant, innovative idea at our request to activate unused space at the corner of Boylston and Exeter Streets upstairs. But what does it really mean? It places the true keepers of public information in community, in partnership, and in physical space with each other. It allows our users, residents, members to come and watch the radio at the library multiple times a week. It democratizes access to discourse, dialogue, and information through shows like Boston Public Radio, itself a rite of passage for any elected or want-to-be elected official in the state, The Culture Show, and yes, occasional visits from programs like Arthur, famed in the library community for his catchphrase, "Having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card." And of course, my personal favorite, Work It Out Wombat. Check it out. But seriously, the strength of our democracy and our society is premised upon institutions and services that activate and preserve the right to free speech, the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, and of course, the freedom of the press. The work of both of our institutions find their rightful constitutional home in the First Amendment. And so let us not be in denial about our current reality. Federal actions throughout the last 90 days have put all of this and more in jeopardy. Here in Massachusetts, we understand the power of libraries. The Boston Public Library was the first large municipally funded library in the United States, founded on the principle that access to knowledge is a right. Our mission is free to all, with equal emphasis on both free and all. No one is excluded from the vast resources and opportunities we steward, because public libraries are living proof that the concepts of equity, diversity, and inclusion can and do work to build stronger communities. Its value goes beyond supporting just noble ideas. For many, their library is the only place to access the internet, to apply for jobs, to find a quiet space for study and reflection. Weakening libraries means weakening one of the supports of American society, a rare, precious space open to all, where facts, knowledge, and education are to be celebrated. So as we work together through these challenging times and find new ways to deliver on the promises of what we are to be, and indeed bridge the divides that are real, and reach those who have felt or been alienated, we must stand up for stronger libraries, stronger educators, a stronger press, and a stronger democracy, one based on freedom and not on fear. And now to the core of our program tonight. It gives me great pleasure to introduce now our moderator and featured speaker. These are two incredibly accomplished women who I am literally humbled to present to you both. A full read of their bios would literally consume all of our time together, but let me provide a few highlights. Martha Minow is the 300th anniversary university professor of Harvard University and chair of the GBH board. Along with leadership roles at Carnegie and MacArthur and as faculty director for the Berkman Klein Center for Internet Society, an institution BPL has been proud to partner with over the years, my personal favorite award of hers is the Gold Medal for Outstanding Contribution to Public Discourse, awarded by the College Historical Society of Trinity College Dublin, in recognition of efforts to promote discourse and intellectualism on a world stage, a suitable one to highlight for tonight. Our featured speaker, Dr. Carla Hayden, joins us as the 14th Librarian of Congress, the first woman and the first African American to lead the National Library, nominated and confirmed in 2016. And we do love celebrating firsts here in Boston. She was, of course, chosen for this role in part based on her accomplishments in public library service as CEO of the Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore, Deputy Commissioner and Chief Librarian of the Chicago Public Library, Assistant Professor of Library and Information Science at the University of Pittsburgh, a career with its roots as a library associate and children's librarian. Who better than an accomplished librarian and former children's librarian to have at the center of national leadership on access to information, preservation, and celebration of cultural heritage. Please join me with applause as we say to Drs. Minow and Hayden, welcome to your library.
We are so honored,
Or,
Dr. Hayden, for your being here, and your leadership at any time would be extraordinary. Your leadership right now is what we need the most. I want to just say that you are well known all over this country as someone who makes sure that people see themselves in the collection of libraries. You also have built a bridge between the world's largest library and community libraries. Can you explain why this matters, why it matters that it's public, and how you do this?
well, I first want to thank Miki for that wonderful, wonderful performance. That piece, I'm the child of two musicians, and that's why I'm a librarian. And my 93-year-old mother, who was the pianist, is back here. She was probably thinking, well, at least she's caring for Beethoven, as Librarian of Congress. And my first experience in terms of books and reading, actually, first experiences happened under a grand piano while my parents were practicing. So they were doing my dad violin, my mom on the piano, and they would give me books to keep me quiet. However, so I grew up loving books and that, but I never really, they were windows to the world for me. And it was when we were in New York, and I would go across the street to a branch library, and I can't remember who put this book in my hand, but somebody put a book, Bright April, about a 7-year-old little girl with pigtails who was a brownie, and they had its beautiful illustrations. They had a piano in the living room, and I said, oh my, that's me. And I loved that book. I took it out so much. I learned about library fines that my mom keeps reminding me about. She thought, but books were so important and they were so wonderful. But then this important thing, if you never see yourself in one, what's that saying? And that's when I realized, wow, this really is powerful, because you love it, but then you like being exposed to everything else. And so having the world's largest library that has so many treasures that people don't even realize, from Beethoven to Rosa Parks' peanut butter pancake recipe that we put online so that during the pandemic people could make that with their kids. All of these things makes this national treasure literally be available for so many people that are in their local libraries, wherever they are. And they can go online now and see that recipe or see a copy of Beethoven's.
It's phenomenal. The panel just before this was addressing issues of misinformation and distrust. Is there a role for libraries in addressing those issues now? Artificial intelligence, the transformation of how information and misinformation are produced and preserved and distributed?
Well, libraries have always been, especially public libraries, those trusted sources, and librarians as the trusted purveyor of information. We have one of the, well, you're a lawyer, but we have a strong stereotype too. And
isn't there an action figure?
There is, yes. We have an action figure, Nancy Pearl, but people would know that librarians are there to serve, to be that trusted source. And our stereotype actually has worked for us in this age, because librarians, as I've often said, when you see in commercials, when they want to sell something and really show its dynamic, they show the librarian going wild. When they have a cookie, that's a good cookie if a librarian is going to dance and get on their table. So that trust is baked in the cake, as they would say in that. And so people do come all the time. I got a chance before this started to just go around this building, seeing the people watching radio and that excitement in the children's room and the teen central, where all these teens with all kinds of things on them. And they were really wonderful, but in the teen central, and it says this is a safe space. And they can be what they want to be and have all of these kind of things. This is the epitome right here where we are. And that combination with public information is so powerful. So libraries are continuing to be those safe spaces for people. And I think that some of the difficulties that we're having are actually bringing to light for so many people how important these libraries are.
I'm sure you're right. And it seems kind of remarkable that just in the last 2 weeks, we started with the 250th anniversary of the launching of this country, the shot heard around the world, the battles that led to the Declaration of Independence. We're going to be having anniversary after anniversary after anniversary. I know you've been thinking about two Georges, and maybe Thomas Jefferson gets in the mix. Tell us.
The Library of Congress had been planning an exhibit with the Royal Archives and about our two Georges, our George Washington, and George III. And it got delayed because of the pandemic and things, but it actually, that delay helped because we could delve even more into the stories of two men who were reading some of the same books. They had to deal with some of the same issues, slavery, all of those things that we could open it, and we opened it in June, to have, and I'm sorry, we just opened it a couple of weeks ago. In June, we opened our first ever Treasures Gallery. The Library of Congress had never had a Treasures Gallery, a permanent Treasures Gallery. We put all of these different things in. But several weeks ago, we were able to finally open two Georges. And it was interesting to see people's reactions that some of the same issues, what is the role of the chief executive of a new country, and what George Washington said about being president, and what George III said about George Washington saying, I don't want to be a king.
Yes.
And we were able to present all of that with original documents. And
extraordinary.
Here it is. You can see it. This is what it is.
It is extraordinary. There is really nothing like this was the paper that was touched by this person.
And that's where you get into artificial intelligence and how do you know something is authentic, and the real forensics that go into testing the paper and making sure, and chain of custody. But those issues that we used to call in, sometimes still do in librarianship, information literacy. Trusted source. How do you know when you're looking for information that this is the trusted source that you should use and really rely on?
The provenance. How do we track it back? Where did it come from? I think that that's what young people need to learn more than anything. So where did this come from? Who created this information?
And it's a perfect thing for young people because they love mysteries and finding out and being these history detectives and things like that. So getting them involved with that and, is just a natural for them.
One thing that I don't think everybody knows is the role of your library in serving people, all people, people with disabilities, people with visual impairments, people who actually don't have access. So the audiobook activity. And as you think about that and think about, again, this age that we're living in with new technologies, where more and more people, regardless of their abilities or disabilities, want to get information orally or visually and not reading. Where does that fit in?
Reading differences. In the Library of Congress, when the building, it started in 1800, and then in 1897, the iconic Thomas Jefferson building opened, and that's when they said, we want to make sure that we have, as they said, materials so that all may read. And they started the library service to the blind. And now it's the print disabled, to recognize that there are different ways of reading differences. And that's when the audio started as well. The first person, in fact, in 1897, when that building opened, to introduce that service to present was Paul Laurence Dunbar, who was working at the Library of Congress at that time, and he gave a poetry reading to blind people. He also, his famous, I know why the cage bird sings.
Yes.
That's from the poem Sympathy that he wrote while he was working in the stacks of the Library of Congress. And those cages were those stacks in Washington, D.C. and all that. But that's the kind of thing that we're bringing to light and seeing that.
Wow.
And so that idea that you make materials accessible in whatever formats are now translating into the modern age with Braille readers and downloading and all of those things. And now also with people with difficulties with print in general, macular degeneration and things like that. So and then people who just want to listen to audiobooks.
What is the role of libraries in preserving information, even controversial information? I know Germany has recently decided that Mein Kampf should be available and published in Germany after it being banned since World War II. What is your view about even hateful material or controversial material?
Mein Kampf, and that's an interesting one because with Germany, because that was the site of, and they had a different relationship, but Mein Kampf has been one of the most requested books in public libraries for a number of years because people want to see it. They want to read it themselves. And we had this old saying too in libraries, let the books battle it out on the shelves. David knows that, that you present the things so that people have that opportunity. So yes, read it, because sometimes when you read the original and you can make your own connections possibly to what's going on now. You can see the echoes. You can draw your own conclusions and say, oh. Okay, so Fahrenheit.
Yeah, 451.
Who's reread that lately?
Oh, yeah.
So think about what authors were saying, what people were saying at the time. Look at the original, and you might see some of those echoes.
This is a tough time for many people at the front lines in libraries.
It's horrible for many people at the front lines. Librarians are getting death threats, all types of vandalism, things that are being placed in libraries that you wouldn't want to touch. It's been difficult.
What can people do?
Support their local libraries. Sometimes going, I know it might not be the most thrilling thing, but go to a library board meeting. They have a public speaking part. Express your support. Use your libraries. Know that it helps to have that public support. And vote when there are bond issues, when there are issues that relate to libraries. Vote for those. Go all the way down to ballot. Bond issues are important.
Do you think that there's a role in libraries in helping people understand civic participation, civic engagement?
Definitely, because we know that there aren't as many civic education programs. We should have things, social studies and different things like that. We're not having that. So the library can play a part in that. and they are already community spaces that host forums, have candidates night in public libraries that they can play that role, and also, especially with young people, and do it in creative ways, that they can have displays and all types of things that highlight, here's how government works. You're wondering about it, you're hearing about it, here's something that you can look at.
Do you think that there's anything that should not be in a library?
Legally declared pornography, and that's the law, and it shouldn't be. Now, I remember of a certain age when we didn't have comic books in the library. We were a little prudish. We didn't think that was that. Now graphic novels are in there. So you have to balance what your personal types of things, and librarians have to do that a lot. You may not like a certain genre, you may not like that, but if people are requesting it and want it, and especially young people, keeping up with how they get information or how they read and what they want to read. I remember when manga came out, manga, well, yeah, that was very controversial. Should libraries provide that? So there have been instances, and for when you go back in history, romance novels were a little frowned upon too.
It's the only thing.
I know it's hard to imagine.
It's the only thing keeping the book industry
Bodice
alive.
rippers, they called them.
Wow.
Yeah, oh no.
Does the Library of Congress have comic books?
Oh, we have the world's largest collection of comic books. Oh, this was a setup. I didn't know she knew that, but I should have, with intellectual property and copyright, because in 1870, the Library of Congress became the administrator of the U.S. Copyright Office, and that's when the collection really expanded, because the Library of Congress gets to pick from the deposits that people submit. So we don't do the wallpaper that they do for copyright, but all other materials, and that's when the collection grew with comic books. And so now we're really working to make sure that we connect our collections to what's going on. So when the Captain Marvel, I think, I'm looking at my colleague, came out, the latest movie, that's when we put up, look, here are the original drawings of Captain America. Not only the first edition, but that. So getting the library to be more relatable.
Not just books, not just comic books. What about preservation of materials that are ephemera, that are not permanent, or of dance, or of forms that we haven't traditionally preserved?
Well, it was mentioned, and Susan mentioned the archive of like recordings and also film, and that's been a major focus, and prints and photographs as well. And so the Library of Congress has a campus in Culpeper, Virginia, that just focuses on preservation of film and recordings. And we're getting the public involved with saying, hey, could you vote for the 25 films or 25 recordings to be put on a national registry for preservation for all time? And that's been exciting to get people thinking about it. And it's not just in terms of sound recordings of music, but things like Hank Aaron's Home Run.
Wow.
And listening to that and what was going on.
Amazing, amazing. Some people, not me, would say, but now you can have access to the world's knowledge in your pocket with your pocket computer. Why do we need?
Oh, I've heard that a lot.
You have?
Yeah. And libraries, and David knows that too. We, as librarians, why do you need a library? You could just do this, that, and the other. Well, just walk out the door here, and one, you'll see that. But also, everything is not online. And especially, I mentioned that Rosa Parks' recipe. There are original manuscripts. There are the Jonathan Larson, who wrote Rent, on note paper, his calculation for Seasons of Love. Now, unless we digitize it, it's not going to be there. So there are so many things that are not online and could be, and we're digitizing as much as we can in unique things, but no, you don't have it. And so having it all in your pocket is very convenient. What you're having in your pocket is a wayfinder. So you're not getting the actual, or you might not get the document that you might have to still see in person, but you are getting a quick way. Think of it as, and as a librarian, I can say this, as a super duper card catalog in your pocket. So you can put in any question.
Yes.
But we do have bags and mugs that we sell that say librarians, the original search engines. Okay, we're not giving it all up.
That's excellent.
But that's the thing. So yeah, it's cool to put in a question and see what comes up. But then you have to see what comes up and why did it come up first?
Yes.
The algorithms.
Who's choosing it?
Who's choosing it? Who's paying to have it come up first?
Yes.
I don't think people might realize that.
Totally, totally. So when I was dean at Harvard Law School, we have the second largest law library in the world. You have the first. And as legal information is now very digital, we wondered, will anyone come to the library? And of course, it's crowded all the time, all the time. There's something about being in the presence of other people who are researching, who are reading, that I think really matters. But one other thing that we really did wonder about is what happens to the spontaneity of, I was looking for this book, but I see the shelf now. And that leads me to something I hadn't thought of before. And now, let's assume it's accurate. Your digital searching gets you to the perfect thing, but you don't have that spontaneity anymore. So, actually the Berkman Klein and the Innovation Lab at Harvard created a visual. When you do a search, it gives you a visual of the shelf. So you see the shelf.
And that's what's so cool about using technology in those ways, that you let people have that excitement of, they call it cruising the library, but looking at the serendipity of browsing.
Yes.
And to combine those tools, not being afraid of some of the tools, but saying, how can we translate those experiences to the digital world? And there are a lot of cool experiments going on. The Media Lab started a lot of things I remember visiting years ago, and they were doing some very nice things with that. So there are ways that we can use the tools of today and the future.
Right.
To have those experiences.
And keep AI as a servant, not the master.
Yes. The humans in the loop.
Human in the loop.
To keep the accuracy, to train the machines. Now, there's some recent books that say that we better hurry up with getting involved and realizing that there's a possibility that we train those machines so well that they can just keep going faster and better, and that.
Agentic, that they are the agents.
Yes.
That they can do it.
That they are generating on their own. But think about those old episodes of The Twilight Zone. I've been getting comfort in watching those. Yes. Because and in movies that have envisioned a lot of these things years ago.
Right.
Writers and things. So it's always been there, but now it's on steroids.
Right, right.
And we're just waking up to it because it's right here in front of us.
I increasingly think there should be mandatory courses in science fiction, so people actually have in their heads.
Octavia Butler.
Yes, yes.
They were seeing it. Yeah, you people who think and can imagine it, and now we're seeing it.
Right. So there's the future and then there's the past. As we deal with the challenges of this moment, it is important, I know, to think about, there have been challenges in the past.
Yes. And Doris Kearns Goodwin, who is the most optimistic historian I've ever seen, she gives me comfort too. when you see Doris, because as she says, and my colleague, Dr. Lonnie Bunch at the Smithsonian says, there's hope in history. And I heard Doris explain one time, well, you know, before the Civil War, everyone was fraught. They didn't know how it was going to turn out. And even at the Library of Congress, we have a letter, a famous letter that Abraham Lincoln wrote. If he hadn't won the election the second time, and he sealed it and had his cabinet members sign it.
Wow.
Didn't have to open it, but we have it, and we know it. It says that we will transfer power.
Wow.
And so
wow.
What she was trying to convey was that it's hard sometimes living history and being in the midst of it because they're so uncertain, but you can get that hope in history, as Lonnie says, and looking back and see how they survived. See what they did, the Underground Railroad, the French Resistance, all of these things, people have found ways.
Well, there was a time when libraries weren't open to everybody.
Oh, sure, especially people that look like me. That's what made being a woman in a feminized profession to be the head of that was something for the profession.
Very
and
important.
all my colleagues know that.
Yes.
We're the 4 feminized professions: social work, education, teaching, and librarianship. We're 85, almost 90% of the profession is female, and the top management doesn't always reflect that. It hasn't. So that was a big deal. But being a person of color, and my mom knows that I was preparing some remarks for my swearing in. And I was determined to recite every law against, I did my research, every law against people who taught slaves to read or the slaves themselves. You know, how many fingers were going to be amputated, the lashes, the this and that. I'm going over this, and just because that was really something I wanted to convey. And my mom said, Carla, this is supposed to be a joyous occasion. I have people coming. Can we condense that to people who look like me were once forbidden by law to read? But that's why you have to think, why do people want to prevent other people from reading something? There must be something in there. Why?
Yeah. Knowledge
There's
is
a power in it.
Knowledge
Frederick
is
Douglass, once you learn to read, you'll be forever free. In his autobiography, he said he knew it was something that the slave owner came in when the mistress was showing him how to read and said, don't do that. So he said, oh, I got to do that. So that's the power of it.
Well, in a minute, we're going to open it up for some questions, but one last question from me. How do you actually keep the mission focused when you're dealing with budgets, administration, personnel, the hard work of making an organization?
You take those walks into the reading room. You go out and you see all the people doing all the wonderful things. And then that gives you the thing, okay, that's why I'm going back to testify at this hearing. You have to see the fruits of it. And you have to also realize you're doing it for all the staff members. And you're representing them. And they're counting on you to do it. And even when you flub a little bit, maybe you don't get everything right, and they'll see you in the cafeteria and say, it was good, it was good. Now maybe next time you could, correct that. It was good. Because that's what you have to connect and see and walk around like I did with David today. And we stood there at the elevator after the Teen Central and said, this is why we dress up and go to meetings.
The filmmaker Wim Wenders has a film called Wings of Desire that has angels as characters. And at night, The angels go to the library. Are there questions? Raise your hand. There's a question I see in the middle here.
Oh, I see one.
And there's a mic coming your way. And when you get it, would you just say who you are and then ask your question?
Hi, I'm Ron. I live in Somerville, which is near here. At a time when we have a federal government that is trying to destroy museums, libraries, universities, performing arts centers, also all kinds of culture, how do you keep your institution alive and defended against all that?
Well, specifically, the Library of Congress is part of the legislative branch. We are the library for Congress itself and the people Congress serves. And so we make sure that we emphasize that we are the national library and we serve everyone because the country has all types of people. And it's interesting too that we're part of that network, that infrastructure that so many people are now even more aware of. Museums, cultural centers, libraries. So when there's an attempt to change the content and character of those institutions, it's even more important that we all work together. And that's what we're making sure that we keep close and we try to keep strong.
You know, I think that the risk to the funding of the IMLS, maybe you could explain what that is.
The Institute of Museum and Library Services, that's a federal agency that several years ago, maybe 20 years ago, was the libraries, federal funding for libraries were separate from museums, and there was a really coordination and collaboration to put the funding together because they're like missions in many ways. And so recently that agency was reduced and
I think many people
closed.
in the country
didn't even
know.
And that's what's also been interesting, I'm using that term a lot, that these are entities that most people had no awareness of. This is a civic and governmental infrastructure that people weren't aware of, and now they are. And that, wow, well, maybe that could be helpful. Right. Maybe we should look at that. But it's bringing to light a lot of these institutions and agencies.
I guess I can't help but ask, is there a role for your institution in preserving information that is being taken down from government websites or other places?
The web harvesting. And libraries have been doing that, and the Library of Congress have been doing that since the early days of Twitter. Because that's another way. So they are capturing websites and doing those types of things and making sure they're preserved, just like you would those manuscripts.
Right, right.
Another
question over here. Please just say who you are.
Hi, I'm Kelly Chun. I grew up here in Boston as a latchkey kid, and I kind of grew up in this library. Thank you so much, Dr. Hayden, for all you do. And I'm wondering if we can look forward to you remaining in your position for the next 4 years. We need you. We need your advocacy.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And I don't know if I'm not going to share what my mother told her neighbor the other day. I won't. But let's just say it would be an honor for me to be able to finish my term and work with the people I
do. You are going to testify in the Congress soon. How often have you done
Tuesday.
that? Oh, and Tuesday.
And 2 weeks before that, it's appropriations time for the fiscal year 2026 budget. So I just had, and it's all on C-SPAN, an appropriations hearing for the House. And on Tuesday morning, it's for the Senate. And that's really where you get a chance to talk about how the library serves Congress and the people Congress serves.
And maybe remind some of the people there that maybe they went to the library when they were kids and maybe it mattered to them.
And I think you'd be heartened to know that quite a few members of Congress have librarians in their families, have fond memories of their libraries in rural areas and the way that libraries have helped them. And so there is a respect in Congress, I have to say, for the place of libraries.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Another question.
My name is Sunday Abakwe, like first day of the week. Thank you both for the presentation. A few years ago, I watched the Library of Congress select a famous African author to be honored at the Library of Congress. His name is Chinua Achebe.
Oh, yes, of course.
And I was
Things fall apart.
Yes. He wrote many books. I am also an African author here in Massachusetts with more than 20 published books on the market. So I'm just wondering, how do you select an international author to be honored at the Library of Congress? Thank you.
Well, we're going to get your information right after the talk, too. And the Library of Congress has quite a large collection, and half of the collection is in languages other than English. We collect in 470 languages. And even though it's a national library, it's different from, let's say, the British Library, Bibliothèque Nationale, where they concentrate on the materials from the country. The Library of Congress makes sure it has a world view and a worldwide collection. So we actively have 6 overseas offices that are collecting materials, not just for the Library of Congress, but for other large research libraries and public libraries. And we bring materials to this country from all over the world. And we're going to continue to do that. But we'll get your information.
Fabulous. Yes. And just say.
I work here at GBH in Boston. I wanted to follow up on a question you asked Professor Minow about things that are banned or what do you not carry, and your answer was pornography, pornography that's not legal, illegal pornography. And I was wondering where the threshold is on something like that. Like, for example, a bomb-making manual or a manual on how to make ghost guns. And what's the guiding principle? Because in a day when the legal lines are getting redefined, starting with executive orders on what's legal, what's not legal, what are the guiding principles for what we would want or not want in a library?
Every library, most definitely public libraries, has a collection development policy where they outline it, and most of them put them, you can view them. They also have a section about challenging anything in the library. So each library has a thing that says, here's what we collect, here's what we don't collect. And that's a major responsibility. The line is thin because right now you can go on the internet and get the recipe for a Molotov cocktail or anything like that. So what's contained in books is actually, in physical books, is more limited than what you can now get online. The irony of a lot of it is that with the physical book and making that a target, you're trying to control something that now is not controllable. the digital universe is very large. And by focusing on that thing, saying, well, if we can, limit that book, nobody will have it. You're really missing the mark on that. And so it's an exciting time. It's a challenging time because we're dealing with bigger, it's not just that book we're dealing with. So that line is thin, and what we can get digitally is not controlled, too. So anybody can put up and say, here's how you work something, and use a 3D printer to make a ghost gun.
Well, information wants to be free, but potentially, if you have it in a book, you have a context, and maybe there's a book next to it, and maybe you learn more than you would if you just Google it.
The book, the physical book, was a container. And now, with technology, it's everywhere.
But we don't know if it's true or not. I think we have a question here.
Hi, my name is Kevin Andrade. I'm from New Bedford, Massachusetts. Fun New Bedford library fact. Only Portuguese language-based public library in the U.S. It's in New Bedford, Casa de Saudade.
Wow.
A couple years ago, I went into the Boston Public Library archives, and I started looking at Portuguese community newspapers and seeing all the reaction to the Carnation Revolution back in the 70s, which I learned about through my mother. I could not help but think, wow, I cannot believe that I am connecting to my own family's personal history in this way, even though my mom's story wasn't in there. And, this is a more personal question. I was just wondering, do you have any story from your time in the stacks where you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe that I am touching this thing and connecting to my history in this way?
Yes. My family's from Illinois, and each summer I would spend with my grandparents in Springfield, Illinois. All things Lincoln. Lincoln logs, like this, New Salem, the house, the things we felt. You go, there's only one cemetery. You go visit your relatives, you say hello to Abe, because that's just, okay. Grew up with Lincoln, but also as a librarian, I really connected with Frederick Douglass and his story and all of that. So I get to the Library of Congress, and I'm having one of my first tours, and I'm in the stacks, and it's like the graveyard for famous people. Clara Barton over there. Is that Thurgood Marshall? Is that this? George and Ira Gershwin. You're just going through something. And I see Frederick Douglass. And I'm like, oh, wow. Can I pull out a thing? And I think the librarian, she said yes. I'm the new librarian. But I pulled out a file at random and just pulled out one of the file folders. And I opened it, and there in Frederick Douglass's hand was his thoughts on the assassination of Abraham Lincoln.
Oh my goodness.
And through his hand, and Scott Berg, the historian, says that when you see things in original hand, you get that sense. This was connected to that person's hand. I mean, it's like you feel it. And he said he was assassinated, and he crossed that out. He was killed. He crossed that out. You could feel the anger. He was murdered for the colored man. Mm. And I thought, oh, wow, this is something. I found out later that that file had been misplaced. And it was just by happenstance that I pulled that out.
Wow.
And see that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was like, okay, all right.
Well, I can't help but say that I am lucky. My sister, Mary Minow, who's a friend of yours, is a librarian
for
right here.
40-something years. And she's sitting hopefully next to my mom, who said, and she loves you, Martha, but she said, is Mary coming?
Right call, right call. Dr. Hayden, we are so thrilled that you are here, that you are doing what you do, and we are with you when you are testifying, and we are with you every day.